On a steep slope at his home in Roswell, Georgia, Fred Hooks has created a garden that reflects his lifelong interest in plants. After earning a degree in horticulture at the University of Georgia, Fred had a long career working for an apartment developer. The addition of extensive garden plantings to the properties was changing corporate landscaping in the Southeast. Fred was instrumental in developing this new approach and eventually became president of the landscape division of the company. Little did he know when he interviewed Sally for a position as floriculture manager that she would become his wife. When they moved to this house with their 4 children, it was only natural that the garden would be a big part of their new home. Now retired, Fred is still obsessed with finding new plants to add to his collection. Fred, we're here in Roswell, Georgia, a suburb of Atlanta, and it's spring. You can see all the new growth is so fresh. That's one of my favorite things on your Japanese maples especially. And we're standing in your driveway, and I'm so excited because I always preach to people about driveways don't need to be these barren places, and you have taken advantage of every conceivable space to put a plant on both sides of your driveway all the way up.
Well, if you could have been here 6 years ago, all of what you see right here was lawn. And the lawn took up a lot of planting space, and as a gardener and a plantaholic, if you will, every space is precious. So this is what you see today after 6 years.
6 years. And how big is all this? Because it looks as if it just goes and goes.
I think the property is around an acre and a half, and that includes the footprint of the house, so have a little bit less than that, but still find places to plant plants.
Well, and your mailbox planting is another area that I think people neglect. They don't know what to do, so maybe they put a vine on, but you've selected a choice vine for your mailbox. Boston ivy, which Parthenocissus, I love that name, Parthenocissus. But
this particular cultivar is Fenway Park, and in the spring as it comes out of dormancy, has this wonderful chartreuse color about it. And it's a beacon. I mean, when I give directions this time of year, it's to say look for the bright yellow mailbox.
Does the mailman appreciate it? That's
well, the mailman really was never a gardener until he started going by this place. But I'd like to think this was all by theory and had a plan, but a lot of times it's when plants are available or when plants are left over and you need to find a place, and this is the end result, which didn't turn out too bad.
Oh, it looks great. And behind it you've got that great Magnolia virginiana. I don't know if that's a special cultivar, but I love that plant.
It's not a cultivar. It's a selection from South Texas, and it's very interesting. I have groupings of the Magnolia virginiana or Sweet Bay magnolia from various areas of the country, and it's real interesting. They display unique habits, some more evergreen than others, some with more elliptical leaves, but this one tends to be columnar upright. And I think for the first time it's going to bloom for us, so interesting.
Fred, the new growth on this Japanese maple is just vibrant. It's that fresh red, and it looks so good with the Spirea ogon underneath. Does it keep that color in the hot sun? Because this is obviously a hot spot.
This particular cultivar is Acer palmatum moonfire. And it's been in this location now for 5 years, and without any scorch in our hot summers of June, July, and August. And although there are a number of red cultivars, Bloodgood probably being the one most well known, this could be an alternative in a hot situation, but it's also a little bit slower growing, so you don't need to do as much corrective pruning to keep it within bounds, like you would in some cases Bloodgood.
You have a lot of layering in your garden. I don't know if that's intentional or you just have to find room for all the plants, but you've got this barberry here, which I'm not a big fan of barberries, and I'll tell you why, because I used to have to prune a barberry head. But that barberry appeals to me, not only for the foliage, but those pretty yellow flowers.
This particular cultivar is Berber's thunbergi Crimson Velvet. What I like about it is the pendulous habit. Grows a little bit larger, and as the leaves mature, are much larger than some of the smaller red barberries, and quite maintenance-free because you don't have to prune it, I guess.
Your garden has a lot of richness because you've got a million plants here. I don't know how many, but everywhere I look, I see not only one thing, but something behind it and coming up next to it.
All the plants here, they merely rent space. When it's time for them to move, then move it. And I think that's a part of gardening.
I think so too. Plants on wheels. You got to be. They're not doing their job, then
I think so.
move them out so you can try something else.
Sure.
Your property looks as if you started out with a pretty steep grade or slope, and that can be a challenge in gardening, to just how to treat that, what to do with it. And you've got these wonderful steps and architecture.
An easy solution, and when we bought the house, that was the solution, was all lawn. Our idea was to create a series of terraces to make up the difference in that slope, and I think it turned out fairly well.
Oh, it did. And I guess you probably inherited these beautiful oaks.
And they really make, all the hardwoods make the setting. I mean, they lower the scale and kind of bring everything into balance, and I mean, we wouldn't dare ever remove one.
Growing conifers can be tricky in the heavy clay soil of the Southeast. Fred has some valuable advice when we continue.
Fred Hooks has plants tucked into every corner of his garden in Roswell, Georgia. His long career in landscaping gave him the opportunity to meet plant experts all over the world. Even though he's now retired, he maintains his professional contacts in the horticulture industry and remains active and informed on the latest trends in gardening.
We've had the great opportunity, really all over the United States, but in the Southeast, to share our enthusiasm with other individuals with this passion for collecting plants, and collecting plants for the purpose of commercially producing. I like to receive plants to evaluate them and how well they'll do in this particular garden, which, as we all know, is just one area, but if you can trial this and extend that, then it gives a nurseryman an opportunity to understand that this plant may be commercially viable.
The new growth on this, the spring growth, is really appealing. I don't think a lot of people think of conifers for having a spring growth, but they really do have that. This is a lighter green, and I guess that will turn darker as the season progresses.
It sure will, Erica. This particular cultivar is relatively new to the southern landscape industry. It's Thuya placata green giant, and some would say that it could possibly be an alternative to Leyland cypress.
Well, we need choices. I think that's a good. Arborvitae is the common name for Thuya.
In this case, Western arborvitae.
Western arborvitae.
But this plant was planted as a 3-gallon 4 years ago, and about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, and now
wow.
I'm 6 feet 12. It's now 14 feet, but we'll slow down, and I think ultimately in our conditions would be around 30 to 35 feet with a somewhat narrow or more narrow upright habit than the Leyland cypress.
I know this is a metasequoia, but I don't know the selection, but that chartreuse or golden foliage is just knockout.
Erica, this is a relatively new cultivar to the trade called Ogon. It's a golden foliaged dawn redwood. This won't scorch. It will not scorch. It stays solid gold all year round, given an even moisture during our summer months. It'll stay perfectly gold. and appears to grow just as fast as the straight species of metasequoia. And I think as a focal point, quite an interesting tree, I think.
And this will lose its leaves in the fall?
It's deciduous.
Yep.
It will drop its needles.
A lot of times you hear people talk about it's difficult to grow evergreens in the South, and we're here in Zone 7, right outside Atlanta in Roswell, Georgia, and yet you've got this incredible mature evergreen screen with the cryptomerias and the cedar.
I think the conifers have gotten a bad rap because of being planted in our heavier clay soils with a minimal amount of amendment or raising highs, similar to how you would want to plant ericaceous plants or rhododendrons and azaleas for the oxygen that they require during the summertime. They'll grow and thrive as well, I think, as the broadleaf evergreens will do.
And this is raised up here. You get that added height with the retaining wall.
Yes, and again, in this case, the retaining wall was backfilled with organic matter and blended into the clay soils. Now, I think it's important that you blend it.
Right. You don't replace it completely.
Not necessarily, but you don't layer it, where you'll have the organic material on top and the clay soil on the bottom. It'll adjust to the better condition and create a shallow root system. Yes.
From a Japanese maple with an unusual growth habit to a magnolia with a spectacular hidden flower, Fred's garden is full of surprises. Stay with us.
Fred Hook's garden in Roswell, Georgia is the result of years of gathering experience and information about plants. From his university studies to his career in landscaping, Fred Hooks has met some remarkable people who have helped him along by sharing their knowledge with him.
I've always perceived that there's a grand trilogy of horticulture in the southeastern United States. And I view those three fellas as my mentors. They are the late J.C. Ralston, Dr. Michael Durr, and the great plantsman Don Shatta. And the next generation is developing as we speak. And they have been inspired, I'm sure, by not only those three individuals, but others. And it's very exciting to know some of them and looking forward to knowing more of them.
This Japanese maple has deeply divided leaves and then some that look divided again, and it has that filigree look. It's really just handsome just for the foliage.
Erica, this is an example of a linear leaf or strap leaf form called Acer palmatum koto no ito. You'll notice the different shapes of the leaves. The new growth actually will come out larger than the previous year's growth that's more thread-like. Next year, this will become thread-like and it will push out a broader strap leaf. But although it appears to be very, very delicate, this is one tough plant and grows for this type of Japanese maple remarkably fast. Having the great opportunity to travel prompts you with different types of ideas. And what we've tried to do is apply those ideas with the plant materials we know will hold up under our southern conditions. And some of the things I've liked to do is to create living plant platforms out of small growing trees and running vines, flowering vines through them. It's a less formal look, but I think a gardening look, and rather have more than less.
I found another plant that I want to add to my list of must-haves.
Good.
And we're standing right in it, actually.
Well, this is supposedly the little cousin of the big leaf magnolia, Magnolia macrophylla. This is Magnolia ashii, and it's a smaller growing cultivar than our big leaf magnolia, but blooms at a much earlier age. And in this case, we've utilized it to create a tropical effect. And I think it's an excellent one. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to locate in the trade.
I get just a whiff of that perfume. And oh yeah, and look at the blush of that burgundy or maroon.
I think some would say the flower is insignificant because it's held above the foliage, but you know,
It's worth trying to get to,
it's
isn't
worth the effort to do whatever you can to take a look at it, because it is quite magnificent, and
Exotic.
it does have that subtle fragrance that in the late evening sort of perfumes the garden for a while.
A sunny spot with a Mediterranean look is perfect for some unusual plants. And Fred has a wisteria that actually behaves itself. Stay with us.
Fred Hook's garden in Roswell, Georgia is filled with rare and unusual specimens. He continues to search for new varieties and enjoys sharing plants and information with other professionals.
From a collector's point of view, the best way I can describe it was when I was at a plant sale one day, and there were two ladies arguing the merits of a plant. And finally, one of the ladies said, "Listen, hon, it may be the last time you ever get an opportunity to get it, so let's buy it and worry about what to do with it once you get it there."
I love spaces that have not only plants in pots like this great palm, but plants creeping around all through the stone. It's sort of English feeling, or that Mediterranean. Creeping thyme is the main plant here, and then these little
These are Orangiums.
Orangiums. I was struggling for that.
Agavifolium. These came from Texas,
So they like the drainage here.
and the drainage is perfect for them.
And this little variegated,
It's a little yucca. This is a yucca called Tiny Star.
beautiful.
And I don't think you would want to grow 1,000 of them, but I think as a unique focal point, it fits very, very well. And it's very important that you place gravel underneath it, because the leaves themselves do not like to lay on soil, or they could create root rot for them.
And the container with the palm is a nice focal point.
This is a windmill palm, and again, we wanted something that that would hold up like drier conditions, because we're not going to water this every single day, and it does create a focal point and breaks this wide open area, and it really allows you to sort of stop and pause, and sometimes that's important too.
I just noticed that you've got the native wisteria frutescens growing not only all along this arbor, but up. You're using the tree as sort of a living trellis.
Well, everything in this garden serves as a platform for something ultimately, but Amethyst Falls is a wisteria that appears to be somewhat less invasive than some of the larger cultivars, and once established is a prolific bloomer and creates interest in the early springtime.
I call it a well-behaved wisteria.
I think that's great. That's a great term. Sure is.
The only thing you sacrifice is the scent.
What we try to do after it blooms is do some minimal shaping to try to keep it within reasonable bounds, and then let it do its thing. It seems to hold up pretty well. I would consider myself a plant geek. I like to be around people of that nature. We all have a different idea of how to apply this art and craft. Each garden truly is different. Landscape is somewhat static. Gardening is an adventure that will carry on forever. You can continue to learn forever in this field that we've chosen.